Right, there we go. Okay, so what I'll start by doing then is I will put the link in for the Lean Coffee Table so you can see it. Now, what the Lean Coffee Table is, and you should have had an email about this pre-meetup as well. Let's find the chat. There we go. So the Lean Coffee Table is just a facilitation tool. So it just gives you an opportunity. If you've got any topics you want to talk about or you think about before the meeting you think might be good for discussion, you can stick them in there. So we've actually got some topics in there already. So if you click on that link, and I'll actually share screen so you can see what they are. It says, there we go. Everyone see that? Okay. So topics we've got in there at the moment, we've got some quite generalized ones, and we've got some that are quite specific to regulation and so on. As I said, there are only 5 of us on here, so I'm more than happy if there are anyone just wants to chat about a topic, or if they want to pick anything from here and just start a conversation with it. Feel free. I don't think it's worth going through a massive add loads more topics because we've got quite a few on there. But are there any burning topics that people want to discuss tonight? Open suggestions. Chris, you've normally got something that's quite controversial. Is there anything you want to do?
Yeah, I do. So let me have a look down the topic. So I could take the CBDC one.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, CBDC stands for central bank digital currencies, and it's more of a centralized style of crypto run by the states rather than a decentralized organization. And if you follow the space, you'll know that just about every central bank in the world of every nation is undertaking some form of evaluation, proof of concept, pilot program, assessment. They've probably got a committee. They've kind of got some sort of early stage thing out in the wild. Everyone's trying it out. All the states are doing it. And I wouldn't say it's just around the corner. I'd say it's still at least 5 to 10 years out. I know in China, they've already got one live that seems to be doing quite well. But I sensed that a growing concern from the civil rights and civil liberties groups about some of the more dystopian sides of a central bank digital currency versus its positives. So no system is perfect, but at the moment the state, I don't believe, is doing a very good job at articulating the benefits of a central bank digital currency, i.e. programmable money, versus some of the more dystopian aspects of having the state being able to track what you're spending and how you're spending and who you're spending it with, but not just track, but also put limitations, put restrictions and put blockers on what you spend. And if you follow the UK news at the moment, there's been some high profile cases of people who have been debanked, unbanked, deplatformed. So I guess cancel culture has entered financial services. And the fear is that if you're not too happy with somebody's political views or personal views or whatever, you can somehow get their access to financial services withdrawn or restricted. And because in this digital world, finances underpins just about everything else, not being able to buy stuff or access services restricts a great deal of other rights as well. So that's the sort of negatives of central bank digital currencies and how it's kind of playing out. I expect that we're not going to be able to deploy one in the UK without some kind of referendum, or at least a pretty serious discussion around it. It's in line with, it'll be as big as change to our currency as joining the euro would have been, I expect. And it's something that's for that reason going to be quite a way out. But yeah, I've been to a few protests now in London, and I've spoken to some of the people who are running the protest and pretty passionate about it, and they've got some pretty alarmist views. Some of it's right, some of it's wrong, but it's filed alongside other things that people are generally concerned about now, be that environment, be that oil, be that vaccinations, be that whatever. It's something that's come on the radar of the professional protest groups, and it's something that's which is quite right. It's something that needs a lot more discussion, and these groups generally do a good role at pushing it to the front of people's mindsets. But yeah, that's where CBDCs are at, in my opinion.
Yeah, I put a link in there as well, which I'll bring up. And what was interesting about it was the people that are working on it as well, because I think you're right. There's a lot of scary stuff that could potentially happen with it. There's a lot of scaremongering, but I suppose the other thing for me that always worries me is there's a big I suppose a big view that the government wouldn't do that to us, and we're not going to be like China or whatever else, which is a bit scary, really, that people think like that, because just because we're not China, just because we feel we're different, it doesn't mean that this sort of thing can't happen. So I think it's I think we've got to be careful not to sleepwalk into some of the like you say, the dystopian future that could occur. But the interesting thing I thought was that some of the people that are working on it, you've got some quite high profile people in some of the other layer one blockchain space. So if I pick, I think we've got someone from Ripple, Avalanche involved in it, Barclays, Quant. So you've got Electronium, so you've got quite a lot of existing blockchain and innovators that are getting involved with it. And I mean, my hope is with that yeah, a lot of the things that we actually want as the positives that you were saying about, Chris, will actually be baked into it. But I think the other thing that I always hear is people having concerns about tax being taken directly from their bank account. If they get a parking fine or a speeding ticket, that'll be taken directly from bank accounts. So that element of control. But yeah, I suppose with anything, isn't it? If you've got bank accounts at the moment, in Cyprus, they threatened to just skim off the top of, I think there was 100,000 limit. Everything else, the state were going to skim off and say, we need this money to keep ourselves afloat. So anything over that is ours. So it can happen with bank accounts, even easier with digital currency and CBDCs, I guess.
Yeah, I think we've had some indications of what Western governments might want to do with such a thing. So like in Australia, which is fairly comparable with our democracy over here in the UK, they gave out government benefits on a prepaid debit card, which was perfectly fine. It's very practical rather than them having to withdraw cash from the post office. But then good intentions kicked in and they said, okay, well, I don't know, we've got people who've got gambling problems, so maybe we should put restrictions on whether you can use this money for gambling. Oh, we've got an obesity crisis, so we're going to limit how much fast food you can buy. Oh, and yeah, how much sugary drinks you can buy. So before you know it, the money itself, the mechanism of spending money becomes a tool of social control, for good or for bad. And it starts off being good intentions but before you know it, it's the ability to control individuals or large groups of people's ability to spend money becomes very, very tempting, I think, for even the most liberal of governments to do. And I think that's, I know that these foundations are coming up with all sorts of codes of conduct and rules and whatever, but scope creep's a thing. And if it's not built into the actual whatever blockchain solution, whatever, it's easy to be implemented into something else. It's comparable to, say, congestion charge in London, and how the scope creeps turned into a massive big problem that's again being protested and queried from what was a very humble beginnings and seemed like a sensible thing, has turned into something completely against what it was originally started. And I think the same thing could happen with a CBDC. And also we're moving forwards without looking at what we're kind of giving up with cash. And there's obviously massive problems with financial exclusion, digital dependency. There's a whole chain, there's a whole layer of tech architecture. You need a phone, you need internet connection, you need electricity. All of these things are fairly reliable here, but they do go down. And I think we've all been to supermarkets when the power goes off and they were like, okay, well, cash only. And I think it's a similar thing. And whether that's accidental or deliberate, like what happens in India, every time there's a protest, they turn off the digital infrastructure. that would kill the financial infrastructure as well. So we need to work out what we're going to do to protect and manage. I know China's got offline CBDCs. They've managed to do it for a little bit, which is kind of clever, their solution. And I'm hoping we're going to bake something similar into what we're up to here.
Yeah.
Well, I know that here in Switzerland, they're testing a wholesale CBDC, CBDC, and they're planning on rolling it out, I think, like in the fall. And a lot of people here are kind of questioning, you know, where does it stop? You know, if it's wholesale and it starts working, you know, you can roll it out to the personal, you know, the private people or retail as well. And I know a lot of people are talking about making, I guess, the code, the open source, you know, that it should be developed from the bottom up rather than the governments kind of like developing it themselves and not asking the people about it. So I think that that's a big discussion that's going on here in Switzerland, because they are already testing it, even though they say, you know, it's only going to be for, you know, the wholesale, to make sure that the you know, the currency exchanges are stable, and so that banks don't have to have as much money on reserve and stuff like this. So I'm a little bit skeptical, to be honest, the more I read about it, you know.
Yeah, and I suppose it's like with everything, isn't it? It's gradually normalized, so it's brought in, keep working on it, get all the views out, but you know it's going to happen. It's just being normalized as
and it's been packaged for me as a user, or as the person who would get one of those or get paid my pension from it or something. It's being kind of packaged as convenient for me, so that way I can be like, yeah, let's do it, you know. And if you read into the back of it, you know, it all of a sudden it'll be here, and then we won't be able to vote on it or something. You know, we have referendum here in Switzerland, so there are a lot of things that keep those kind of things from being pushed down our throats, you know. But still, it's a kind of a scary subject, you know.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is, if you look at Canada, because there were some things where special powers were invoked to push something through without potentially having a vote or a mass agreement on it. So yeah, it can be quite scary. James, have you got any views?
Yeah, I guess it's all the CBDC talk. I hear about it in mostly other countries, European countries, and on the other side of the world. I'm in California, in the United States. I think we're pretty far from adopting it here because of all the other crypto regulation talk that's going on. My real concern is, my only concern with CBDCs is just the power. You know, right now, if they want to take something out of my bank account, it's a privately owned company. They'd have to issue some kind of local law or some kind of federal regulation that would allow the bank to do that and send the process over, paperwork, all that good stuff. Whereas I feel like a CBDC, much easier access and much more control, really, because it is centralized. You're not going to have that protection of the decentralized, kind of system and ledgers and wallets. So that would concern me. I mean, I feel like we're eventually going that way to a wholly digital currency world, years and years away. We're not quite at the Harrison Ford level yet, following robots around. But we're, eventually we're getting there. Technology is growing so fast. I mean, eventually everything will be digital, and hopefully we'll be able to keep some of the decentralized assets, alive and well as good, and that those will still be tokenized and traded as well as the centralized stuff. But that it's just more government control, like Chris said, is even with good intentions, it starts off as good intentions. Inevitably, it turns and twists at some point from some kind of influence.
Yeah. I think one thing to note is, well, first of all, one final point is that nobody's asking for it. No normal people are asking for this thing. And I'm still confused about where the push is coming from, other than a kind of keeping up with the Joneses, like China's doing it, so we should do it. I'm not sure why, there doesn't seem to be any person saying we should have this. It just seems to be a conclusion that we're doing it, we better do it. And I guess the other one from this group's perspective is, what is the impact on decentralized crypto projects, because like what happened in China, once there's a state-backed one, then the independent ones become a bit of a threat to that. And I expect as central bank digital currency ramps up, the pressure put on unstate currencies will be increased, be that AML rules, close down of exchanges, all sorts of regulation and all sorts of things to make it very inconvenient to have anything else. Exactly what happens with normal fiat currencies. It's very hard to launch your own currency that's not a state-backed one, and I think it'll be the same with crypto.
Yeah, I think it's definitely become more difficult on ramping. So trying to get money into or out of exchanges now. I think that I'm sure you've probably had the same, Chris, but emails from a lot of the UK banks restricting, firstly, whether you can do it, but secondly, if you can do it, amounts you can transfer and the like. So yeah, interesting. Okay, good stuff. Well, that was quite an interesting one to kick it off. Let me just share the screen. So social. Do you? Am I pronouncing your name right?
It's social, like it's so chilly outside.
Social. I was trying to work out how to say it. For the
That's all right. I've had it all my life.
So is there a topic on the screen that you wanted to pick, or have you got anything different that you wanted to bring to
you know, I'm on the mobile, so I can't see the print.
Oh right,
so
okay.
Small. So if you guys go ahead and pick it out, that'd be awesome, and then I'll join next time from the desktop.
Yeah, no problem at all. James, I'll pass to you then. Anything you see on the screen that you feel is worthy of discussion?
I guess it kind of goes along with number 78, another black swan event imminent. They'll crash the market. I guess it kind of going along with that. It's more about, at least what I'm seeing, a lot of the XRP and SEC lawsuit coming to finalization finally, and XRP being set to kind of gain and pump after that's settled. And since it's looking like it's going their way, I was just curious if how you guys are viewing the XRP and upcoming Bitcoin halving middle of next year, and how all that's going to kind of set up a next bull run. I'm thinking by end of next year.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, that, because I mean, a black swan event, yeah, we could get that at any time, and I mean, we've got the potential war looming. Could expand further than just being Ukraine and Russia. So there's a lot of tensions with that, but I think the other thing, it probably links to the one above it, 94, which is the Mt. Gox, thinking about that. So I mean, with the market, you're right. If we get something unexpected, having been around when we had the last two crashes because of various things and COVID and stuff like that, yeah, the market just plummets, bounces, and kind of hovers along at quite a low rate for a while. But the Mt. Gox one's quite an interesting one, because Mt. Gox, I think it was 2014, where they went bankrupt and lost all sorts of Bitcoin. And I think the total was about 850,000 Bitcoin that they lost, which was worth about, I think it was about $150 million at the time. But it's now something like $800 billion worth. So it's a ridiculous amount now. But there's a deadline looming for that of October, of when they have to make repayments of what they've managed to get back, which means that potentially come October there could be a load of Bitcoin coming back into retail hands, and potentially people might sell some or all of it. So again, that could cause a bit of carnage in the crypto market. But I don't know what's Chris, have you got any views?
So in terms of black swan events, I'm not, obviously it's hard to predict those sort of things, but I'm sensing a sunsetting of the whole decentralized crypto setup. I think I've been sort of quite clear on this over a lot of these meetups, which is that I'm kind of less enthusiastic as I was maybe 10 years ago on this. And I'm sensing that through government regulation and tightening of all the restrictions, plus a general sort of tiresome angle of these things. I think people are tired of all the pump and dump stuff. They're tired of a load of projects that don't really necessarily go anywhere. They're tired of all the crypto bros and all that. They're tired of NFC, stupid monkey pictures and all the kind of gifs and things are flying around. And really, we're getting to the point where we're just wondering what have we achieved out of all of this. Some people got very rich, some people got very poor, but have we pushed humanized civilization forward in any way at all? I'm not entirely certain. And it could be the black swan event is just we get bored and AI pops up, metaverse pops up, some other shiny thing comes along, and we all plow our money into that and we get on with something else. And I think that's more likely if you're going to jump ahead maybe 20, 30 years, is Bitcoin and all these things going to be still around? I'd say no. If you were to do a post-mortem on what killed it, I'm not sure there'll be one single event. I think it would just be a general people just getting disinterested in it and moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with the Black Swan event is if we knew one was coming, then yeah, it wouldn't really be a Black Swan event, would it? But then the flip side of it is, yeah, I mean, all sorts of things could happen. And I think, yeah, I don't know. I mean, probably the biggest downside about the crypto market, certainly in my eyes, and I'm in agreement with you, Chris, that there's been a lot of stuff that's gone into the crypto market that's been valueless and has just either declined or doesn't do anything. So there's no real utility to it. And if you look at a lot of the tokens that were launched, they were launched for the sake of it or to fund some of the teams and so on. A lot of pump and dumps. Metaverse, I mean, arguably you could say some of the currencies used for the metaverse that could be used to buy in-game assets and stuff like that. There is some benefit there. And I think potentially Web3 gaming, whilst at the moment it's quite underdeveloped and it's mostly things like card games like Splinterlands or stuff like that, there could be good potential with that. There seem to be a lot more AAA developers coming into the space trying to build bigger and better games. But then I suppose the other challenge you've got is it's predominantly run by big centralized firms at the moment in the non-Web3 space who aren't really going to like Web3 taking over some of the cut that would normally go to them, say things like Fortnite and stuff like that. So it's definitely an interesting one. Don, you've got your hand raised.
How's it going, Simon?
Good to see you. Been a while.
Been here in the strangest of places.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I'd be of the opinion that in 2024 and 2025, when the central bank digital currencies will be running full force, that's going to be the make it or break it time for the blockchain for the blockchain economy. It's either get fully absorbed into the corporate world, and that's the only way it can survive, which I think is the most popular attitude here in Ireland. Or the other direction, it goes, no, let's go back to our grassroots and be a decentralized alternative to this CBDCs. So like go back to solving practical problems and not just like, here's a cat, I have a token, if you like cats, buy my token, which happens every bull run. Let's say one practical problem that I'm thinking of that needs to be solved. Now we noticed this in Ireland with political activists, and then more recently in the UK, it's become a famous issue. The concept of politically exposed people, and you can have your bank account shut down if basically the EU doesn't like you. They kind of they have, I forget what it's called, but there's like your bank, let's just call it your banking record. So Simon has a record out there that you probably haven't seen, but gets sent to every bank and has a list of who you are, your family, your business connections, your political connections, all that kind of thing. And then some banks will decide, oh, I don't like Simon, I'm going to drop his bank account. And then the banks will just won't tell you why it closed your bank account, but it is happening to some people. Like Nigel Farage might be controversial, but it's also happening to people who aren't very controversial. Like so that to me is a practical problem to solve, which can be solved with, you know, you own your own wallet, you own your own private keys, and so can send you crypto. You know, like we could all now put all our assets into crypto, send it to a decentralized wallet. That solves some problems, but it doesn't solve every problem that exists with not having a bank account, such as, I guess like if you want to do normal banking transactions, mortgages, credit cards, that kind of thing gets a little bit more complicated. So that to me is a problem that needs to be solved. Like, I'm in the West, you know, we were talking about how do you hide your savings from the Taliban? That was like a use case in 2017, and now in the West we're like, how do you hide your savings account from the EU? Even if you're in the UK, the EU is still, EU regulations are still going to get you.
Yeah, very true.
So that's 20 minutes. Sorry for that long rant, but yeah, so there's a practical problem that needs to be solved there. So I think that's going to make it or break it.
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, going back to the utility part and Chris's point about will it just falter and die? My view is I think it will be around. I think and we've seen it over the last couple of cycles where a lot of the tokens that are there are starting to get exposed for not actually doing anything or not adding value or stuff like that. So you tend to find as you go from cycle to cycle, a lot of these coins just fall by the wayside, and you had stuff around privacy coins, a lot of stuff around gaming coins and tokens, NFTs, as Chris said, you had sky high valuations for them that are all of a sudden quite a bit lower. So it's interesting. I think the other thing to keep an eye on is, yeah, I think we alluded to earlier, if we are going into another bull run, you're right, is this going to be one of the last bigger bull runs where people potentially are looking at it as an exit for those that are more experienced in it? I don't know. Have to wait and see. Welcome, Victor. Good to have you on.
Thank you, Simon.
So yeah, I don't know really. It all started from Black Swan, didn't it? But I think yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in the crypto space at the moment that has probably changed it quite a bit over the last few years, and certainly since I've been in it, which is quite a few years now. The more experience you get, the more you see these things happen. You see a lot of stuff repeating, and I dare say you, Chris, the amount of time you've been in it, you've probably seen quite a lot of repetition of stuff, and yeah, it does go in cycles. Cool. Okay. So Dawn, would you like? I've got the screen shared with the lean coffee table. I think we've probably covered a couple of these. We've covered Mt. Gox, covered Black Swan. We've covered CBDCs. Are there any of the other topics you want to pick for us to have a chat around, or anything you feel you want to bring to it if it's not on there?
Well, the two that pops up in my eye, one is 92, which is almost similar to the rant that I just gave, and then there's 91, because I have no idea what they mean by estate planning. So right. I'm interested in 91 because I don't know what that means.
Okay, we'll look at both of those. I mean, the 92, when I put that on there, and that was just a quote I saw. I was reading an article, I think it was on the Daily Hodl or one of the other websites, but it was Robert Kennedy, who's running running in the US, and he made this statement, which was, as president, I'll make sure that that your right to use and hold Bitcoin is inviolable. Bitcoin is not only a bulwark against I'm not even going to try and say it, totalitarianism and the manipulation of our money supply. It points the way towards a future in which government institutions are more transparent and more democratic. And it also came out that he owns between 100 and 250K's worth of Bitcoin. Now, apparently, when he had to do his, so they've got to declare all this stuff. So apparently, when he declared it originally, he declared he had none, and then they found out he had 250K's worth, apparently, and then he said he bought it after he made that declaration. So again, that I thought that was quite interesting. People are already trying to pick that apart, but that's actually a politician that's supporting the principles of crypto and Bitcoin, and I dare say that would go quite against what the rest of the government would potentially be wanting. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. I'll pop the article. I'll pop the article in the chat in a minute. But any views on that?
I agree with the statement. It's in line with half of my worldview.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, I mean, that was more something I put in just because I found it quite interesting that was a statement made. Estate planning, I think Nanda put that one on from, although Nanda's not on tonight. It's something that I've talked about once or twice before, but a lot of the stuff I do when I'm doing consultancy work is working with will writers and estate planners. And it's, again, for those of us that do hold cryptocurrency or NFTs or other digital assets that are on the blockchain, one of the things that I think we were talking about quite a bit earlier was around ease of access and things like ownership of your cryptocurrency. And the one thing that stands out with cryptocurrency at the moment is it's a bit more complex to get into, and I dare say, Social, you've found this when you've been investigating it before dipping your toe in the water. But it is a lot about self-custody, especially with things like what's happened with FTX, Celsius, all of the other crypto centralized or CeFi exchanges that have gone under and people have lost their cryptocurrency. The biggest issue with holding your own cryptocurrency in self-custody is if anything were to happen to you. So if you were to have a car crash and you weren't able to speak or have control of any of your limbs or anything like that, or if you died and you've got everything in your crypto wallet, and we're drummed into us to make sure you keep everything secure, don't give out your private keys, don't write them down, don't do anything like that. What actually happens to cryptocurrency or your NFTs? And actually, it's one of those areas that at the moment, if you go and see a will writer or an estate planner and you say to them, I've got a couple of Ethereum, I've got a load of Polygon tokens, I've got a Bored Ape NFT, amongst other things, they'll just look at you as if you're from a different planet. And I think the scary thing about that is, as a result of that, people aren't actually effectively planning what to do if they were to die with their cryptocurrency. Because I don't know about you guys, but I know what I'm doing with my cryptocurrency. If I was to speak to my brother, either of my sisters, or any of the rest of my family about it, they wouldn't have a clue what I was talking about. But probably wouldn't even know what I've got or where it is or whatever. And that's a really, really big problem. Because if you imagine now, if you hold any crypto, if you just put yourself in a position of you're not here anymore, is there anyone that would know what you've got, where it is, how to access it, what to do with it if they can access it? So I'm just really interested with all of you guys on the call. Has anyone actually got a robust plan in place at the moment, or have they thought about it?
I thought about it.
I have thought about it.
Go ahead.
Go on, you go first, Don, then we'll go to social.
I think that you could make an agreement with your lawyer. Let's say the majority of people have their crypto on a third-party website. So I'm thinking of like people like my elderly mother. Like that would, I'm sure you could just give your password and user details to your lawyer, and then it gets passed down to somebody, kind of similarly how they did deeds in the old days. So when the person passes, they get the username and password. And they would also have to get the email password as well to get around security stuff, or whatever information is needed to get the access. And for people who have their own crypto wallets, it'd be a similar thing. You know, you write down your I can't say the word now.
Mnemonic phrase, yeah.
Yeah. You write that information down and hope your lawyer doesn't steal all your apes.
Well, I mean, this is one of the issues with it, and we'll come on social in a minute. But yeah, the difficulty with that is it's a lot more complex than that. Or certainly in the UK, I'm not sure, because I know the laws are slightly different in Ireland. But certainly in the UK, there's a lot of process you have to go through. You have to, firstly, if there is a will or anything, it can be mentioned in the will, but you wouldn't have any private keys or anything like that, because wills are public domain. So if you put your private keys or anything in your will,
Okay.
That's public domain, so anyone can go and look at it and then drain your wallet.
You can put it in a box, and in the will you own the box that has the information.
Yeah,
but maybe
yeah, a lot of wills.
Maybe I'm just reading the simple ways that we do it in Ireland. Like,
but no,
I write down a piece of paper, put it in a box, dig it in a hole.
Yeah, I mean, this is why it's such a problem.
Where I keep it.
Yeah, this is why it's such a problem, because you do have issues like that of, firstly, there's a legal process, there's tax, there's all sorts of other stuff, because it's classed as property as well. So there's all sorts of other things that go around it. You'd also tend to have an executor deal with it. And again, if you've got an executor or anyone's been through the process of someone close to them passing away, the executor might be great for doing stuff like dealing with estate agents, selling the house and so on. Highly unlikely they'll have a clue about crypto or any digital assets. So it is actually quite a scary prospect. But I guess the point I'm making with it is, and I think Nanda went to a talk that was about this, so probably why she's put it in there. But unless you do proper planning for it, there's potential for your whole portfolio of whatever you've got to be completely lost. Firstly, through either mislaying your private keys. So you've all heard about that guy who's got 250 million quid's worth of Bitcoin that's in a rubbish dump in Bath in the southwest of England. But yeah, if you die and there's no record of all of this stuff, it's gone. And because of the cryptographic nature of it, impossible to get it back.
Right.
So social, sorry, you had a point. Did you want to?
Oh no, I thought about it, and who do you actually give the information to? Because your parents, as nature goes, they would go before us, and then you give it to the kids. And I mean, I've had to make sure that my older son, especially, that he knows that if you find a piece of paper somewhere in my stuff with lots of little weird words on it, please do not throw that away, and kind of things like that. But here in Switzerland, they're just starting that in some of the cantons. If you're Swiss, it only works for Swiss people though. If you're Swiss, all of your documents about your whole life are in this one place. And, divorces, weddings, all that kind of, all your family stuff. It's like a family tree kind of office. It's all in one place. And whenever you move to a new place, you have to register with your new place, and they go and get all the information from where you're holding. It's called It's called a Heimatort. It's like one little place, and only Swiss people have it. Nobody else has it. And they're thinking about putting that kind of information there, you know, to where you have a person to contact, or you can keep your records there, and then they're safe because they're with the government, kind of, you know, of that little place that you stay. And they're doing that, especially also that if you get divorced, you know, you can, everything is a Swiss person can just say, hey, this is my little home city, go and look there, and they have all the records about me, you know. So and they're thinking about doing that there, because they have no other way to do it. And crypto is, you know, is doing pretty well in Switzerland, you know, in Canton Zug or in Ticino. And so they're thinking about connecting that. But again, it's only good for the people who are Swiss citizens, because if you're a foreigner like me, you know, we don't have that kind of little safekeeping city or safekeeping little office that takes care of all of our documents.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a risk with that as well, because I guess the biggest challenge with it is anyone that has access to your private keys or your mnemonic phrases, as Don says,
Exactly.
anyone that's got any hint of access could drain your wallet, but how do you prove it?
Right.
Because it could go anywhere and anyone could have seen it. So that's what makes it really tricky. And I won't, Chris, you've come off mute. Have you got something you'd like to share?
So I don't have a solution to it, but I have a couple of observations. I guess one of them is this is what happens when you really strip away centralized authorities and you come up with a reason why we have them. So we have already a mechanism in place for people dying who have lots of money in their bank accounts and how to pass that on, and even a discovery mechanism for monies unknown. So I guess it's just something that the crypto world has to deal with. Another observation, I think, is that this is not unique to crypto. It's going across the digital world. We all have a bunch of digital assets, be that photos, files, documents, music, songs. We've all got some quite big libraries now, and it'd be a shame if they were all to be lost. A shame from a personal level, but also from a historical archival level. All these photos and documents have historical value in 100 years' time and things. And it's a shame that all these cloud accounts are just going to expire and get deleted and no one's going to know about them. So it's a common problem, not just limited to crypto, but also it's a potential actual use case for NFTs. So NFTs becoming a like the PDF for information. Like PDFs are pretty good as portable documents. If you have a NFT for a song, for a piece of music, for a document, for a photo, whatever, and in that includes ownership and inheritance rights and all that kind of thing, then we potentially have an actual practical use case for NFTs. And I'm predicting it's if NFTs do go anywhere, this is one possible way. So yeah, I can't solve the problem for you, but I know that it's a common problem. And yeah, ultimately crypto is a bit stupid if you need like £1 billion quantum computer to crack, you know, the blockchain, but or you just go around to the lawyer's office and hold a gun to his head and take your keys out of the wallet, you know, and the safe, then that's much better to do it. So, you know, it's kind of a massive big problem that needs to be solved. I know, you know, smart contract wise, you can have multiple nominees who have to countersign something when you die. So there's all sorts of techie solutions that you could go with. So, you know, maybe that's where it'll end up.
I mean, that is definitely one of the things to consider. And I think the work I've been doing with the estate planners and will writers on it, it's just the basic education of what it is in the first place. And the fact that you can't just write in the will, this person will inherit it. It doesn't work like that, because you can write whatever you want in a will so they inherit it. But if they've got no idea how to access it, what they're accessing, or what it is, then you've got numerous other problems as well. So it does, I think there's a big bit about, I guess for me, it's the planning for if it were to happen, and it could happen at any time, as we know. It doesn't mean that you just get to like 90-year-old and pop your clogs. It could happen tomorrow. And if you've not got a robust plan where you've got something written down, it might be instructions, could be anything, obviously not with your private keys banded all over the place, but it might be something that someone you trust has. The divorce thing raises a really good point as well, Social, because yeah, a lot of the time, yeah, when you get married, there is a tendency to share all that stuff, but actually there's quite a large percentage of marriages don't work out. And then if someone has got your private keys, again, they could drain all your cryptocurrency without you being able to prove it was them. So there's all sorts of other pitfalls with it. So probably a lot more than we've got time to talk about. But yeah, it's definitely one consideration. I think, as Chris said, one of the big benefits of centralisation is you can go into your bank with your death certificate for the person that's passed away, and they've got a department that will deal with deceased investors, and it will get dealt with. Solicitors will deal with the probate and so on. And yeah, there is a smooth as it can be runway to actually distributing it. When you start to chuck digital assets in, and yeah, it does get more complex, as Chris mentioned, with things like ownership of even intellectual works like poems and stuff like that. All of that type of thing has to go through a process to come out of the other end as what actually happens with it, who gets the rights to it, who inherits it. It could even be the platform that owns it. So I know Apple have got quite in-depth agreements with what actually happens with the stuff that's stored on the cloud. And with some of the stuff that you hold on the cloud as well, you might have bought music, but that wouldn't necessarily be transferable to other people to inherit. So my collection of Bob Dylan or whatever wouldn't necessarily be able to be passed on to someone else if it was in digital form. So there's all sorts of pitfalls, but and you're right, it's not just about crypto. It's a lot bigger problem with digital in general. But what I would say is, just to cap that point off, because we're coming to time, if you do hold crypto and you haven't got a plan, I would strongly recommend that you really sit down and start thinking about what would you do, what would you like to happen to it, and if you were to die tomorrow, would anyone know you've got any crypto, let alone how to access it? It is a big problem. Chris, you come off mute.
Yeah, I would say in the shorter term, the bigger problem is not people dying, but their phones dying. And I think people don't even have a plan for if their two-factor authentication device dies or their primary storage device dies, then I think they've lost everything as well. So again, something to think about. It's not just you dying, but maybe your phone having in the crash.
Yeah, I know a friend of mine had exactly that, where he hadn't backed up his private keys, dropped his, I can't remember what he was doing, but he bent over to pick something up that he dropped on the floor when he was in the toilet, and it slips out his top pocket straight down the pan. And it sounds really comical, but yeah, he had nothing backed up, so that was it. His phone died. It's gone. So yeah, definitely a big problem. Okay, so we're nearly at 8 o'clock. Has anyone got any other last things they wanted a quick 1 minute, 2 minute discussion on?
I just wanted to say hi.
Hey, Dragos, good to see you. I'm so sorry. Could you, out of interest, when you accessed you should have gone to the website from the link that I posted, and it should have put you in the waiting room.
I tried to connect using my LinkedIn, but for some reason it redirected me to the LinkedIn main page of the group, and that was it for some reason.
Oh, weird. It should have taken you to a waiting page for this meetup and then let you in after a few seconds.
No, sir, didn't happen.
Right. Okay. I will check that then. I'll have a chat with Paula, because I was tied up all weekend, so I think Paula might have posted a link to it. So I'm not sure there was an issue with that. Did anyone else come through the waiting page out of interest? Should have said a block of crypto, have a couple of pictures and videos. No? Okay, we'll check that, because we were doing it slightly different through the website rather than doing it directly through Zoom. So thank you for that, Drago. So I'll check that, because if that's not working, that might be why we've got a more slimlined group tonight.
Let me try from outside to connect to the other links still till you guys are still here, and I will come back with the feedback.
Yeah, it'll only take 30 seconds. I'll stay on anyway, so that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Good stuff. Okay, well, what I will do then, guys, so we've just hit 8 o'clock, so the meetup will be finished. I'll stay on, obviously, for Dragos to test it, but I'll carry these topics across on the Lean Coffee table. We have only got one more meetup before me and Paula take a summer break. So the next one we've got is Thursday next week, which will be 8 o'clock UK time and Ireland time, Don. And then the following week, same time for us, 7 o'clock GMT +1 on the 25th. So yeah, it's been really interesting, guys, and welcome, as I said, to the new guys. I know James had to jump off, but hopefully you found it useful. And I will pop the, just in case you haven't got them, I can find it. I think I've deleted it now. I'll pop all the socials posts again and links to all of our LinkedIn channels and so on in the chat now. So if you didn't get them first time around, there they are. And other than that, it's been really good to have a catch up, and thank you for talking through such interesting topics as well. So good to see you guys, and I'll either catch you in 2 weeks' time, or I will see you Thursday next week at the Ireland meetup.
Thanks. Bye.
Cool. Thanks, Chris.
Have a good night.
Cheers. Cheers, Victor.
Thank you.
Bye bye.